This guy has been quite lantang lah. Dia pukul PMX, dia pukul kerajaan. I did not have high regards for him the minute dia nak condemn Anwar Ibrahim for being on stage and having that rally Palestine tu, and whatever it does, dia nak against. Dia kata shame on you lah apa. Because of that, I didn't have high regards for him. Tapi ni dia cerita pula pasal levy, pasal subsidi. So sekarang ni when this one goes viral, dia pun viral juga. Orang pun banyak ikut. Banyak orang juga haters of this Madani government. Jadi benda ni I hope sampai kat menteri-menteri macam Tengku Zafrul.
Anwar Ibrahim, dengar sini betul-betul. Jangan gelojoh sangat nak tarik subsidi dan jadi pak turut kepada IMF. Jangan seronok sangat nak zalimi rakyat. Jangan bagi alasan bodoh untuk tarik subsidi. Anwar bagi alasan subsidi kena tarik sebab ada 3.5 juta warga asing yang menikmati subsidi tersebut. Adakah itu boleh jadi punca untuk menzalimi kita semua rakyat Malaysia? Sudah pasti tidak. Anwar kalau panjang akal, dia cari penyelesaian. Tetapi kerana jelas dalam isu subsidi ini, Anwar dan orang-orangnya pendek akal, saya dan rakan-rakan dari Demi Negara telah mencadangkan satu penyelesaian mengenai warga asing dan subsidi. Mudah sahaja Anwar kenakan levy subsidi kepada warga asing dari pekerja ke pelajar, para diplomat serta peserta-peserta MM2H, Malaysia My Second Home. Pengiraan berapa banyak levy subsidi yang perlu dibayar setiap warga asing boleh dibuat Jabatan Perangkaan berdasarkan kepada anggaran penggunaan barangan keperluan bersubsidi yang mereka gunakan. Pasti jabatan kerajaan yang berkenaan tahu apa mekanisme yang hendak digunakan sekiranya Menteri Kewangan dan Perdana Menteri mahukan polisi ini dilaksanakan. Bagaimana pula mereka seperti warga Singapura yang berbelanja di Johor Bahru? Jika mereka beli barang yang disubsidi seperti telur dan beras, denda mereka 10 kali ganda dari harga barangan tersebut. Bagaimana pula dengan parti? Parti ini adalah isu lain yang wajib diselesaikan. Jadi jangan bagi parti sebagai alasan untuk tarik subsidi. Jika levy subsidi adalah dalam lingkungan RM300 setiap warga asing setahun, kerajaan sudah boleh dapat dalam RM1 bilion setahun dan rakyat tidak perlu dizalimi. Itu pun tak boleh fikir ke? Sekarang kita tengok jika Anwar dan kucu-kucunya berani menimbangkan cadangan ini atau seperti yang kita jangka, mereka tetap akan menzalimi kita.
Why don't you do more updates about Malaysia?
I would love to be able to talk about something substantive in terms of policies or initiatives of the Anwar Ibrahim government in Malaysia, but there's just nothing really to critique. I mean, Anwar was waiting for decades to become the Prime Minister of Malaysia, and then after winning the seat, Malaysia is still waiting for him to become a Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the problems are not waiting. The ringgit is steadily drifting downwards. It was around 4.4 ringgits to the dollar when Anwar was elected, and it's now closer to 4.7. Where's it going to go? 4.8, 4.9, 5 ringgits to the dollar? That'll be devastating. And nothing is really being done about it. Now, Bank Negara raised interest rates, which means that people are paying on their loans and mortgages at a rate considerably higher than the national rate of inflation. Anwar wants to cut subsidies on the T20 income group, the higher income group, on everything from poultry to electricity. And he says that this will not negatively impact lower income Malaysians. But of course, that's not how economies work. If you raise costs for one segment of the economy, one segment of the population, that segment of the population that has the most disposable income, if you raise costs for them, then they're going to cut their expenses, they're going to cut their expenditures, which will then have a ripple effect through the entire economy in terms of prices, in terms of production, in terms of demand and consumption across the whole economy. And of course, many of these people in the T20 are themselves business owners. So when they either cut their expenses or raise their prices to compensate for the higher costs that they're grappling with, obviously that's going to affect everyone in the economy, including mostly low-income Malaysians. The government just doesn't look like it has any economic plan, frankly. I mean, they keep sort of falling back on IMF recommendations, you know, the general IMF structural adjustment program, like with the cutting of subsidies. And of course, if they follow through, if they proceed on that path, it's going to be devastating for the Malaysian economy. I mean, when he was elected, Anwar had a manifesto. He came in with a manifesto. In fact, the combined manifestos of Pakatan Harapan and BN. But now nobody seems to be adhering to either one of those manifestos. I mean, think about it. If there had been a hung election last year and no government was formed and Malaysia had operated for the last 7 months without a government, I don't really see how anything would have been different. It's like the government is absent, as it is. And Anwar insisted on naming himself as the finance minister. So it's not like he can blame anyone else for failing to act on the economy. I mean, he's both prime minister and minister of finance. So the state of the economy is pretty much entirely his responsibility. I mean, when he was elected, Anwar asked civil servants to give him ideas about what to do to rescue the economy, and he gave them 2 weeks. It's been 7 months, and still no ideas have emerged. Now he's even asking journalists, or saying that journalists are also responsible for giving him ideas about governance. So, predictably, the opposition is likely to sweep upcoming state elections, which Anwar says is signals political instability in Malaysia, which is causing hesitancy by foreign investors, that they don't feel confident in Malaysia because there's political instability and therefore they're not investing in the country. But I mean, both of these problems would have been solved or could be solved if you had a plan for the economy. Because if you have a plan and you can show foreign investors that you know what you're doing and you're managing the economy, then not only would they have confidence in you, but the opposition wouldn't have anything to use against you. So you wouldn't be looking at likely losses in the state elections if you were managing the economy well. And FDI would be flowing in because everyone would see that you're managing the economy well. So either way, it comes down to the problem, both the problem of facing losses in the upcoming state elections and the problem of foreign investors not having confidence in Malaysia. Both of these come down to the fact that Anwar just looks bewildered by the challenges of running a country. And instead of managing the economy or coming up with a plan and actually governing properly, he's busied himself with vendettas against political rivals, posturing, posing, photo ops, speeches, and, you know, pretending to call Erdogan on the phone to boost his image as a world leader. Or else he's preaching about ethnic and religious hatred as if he lives in some Malaysia in a parallel universe that is being riven by racial hatred and strife and violence, which of course isn't happening. None of this is helping. None of this is addressing the real problems that Malaysia is facing. People need to pay their mortgages. They need to pay their rent. They need to pay their bills. They need to be able to buy groceries. They need to be able to service their debts without going bankrupt. And they need their salaries to stop being worth less with each passing day. Malaysia needs guaranteed food security. I mean, there are real practical problems that people are facing, and rhetoric about, you know, culture war type issues is not going to solve them. I really think that if Anwar had been from a younger generation, he would have, instead of getting into politics, he would have and should have, you know, pursued a career as a pundit of some kind, you know, a YouTuber or a blogger or something like that, where you can just talk abstractly your criticisms of the government or, you know, your big ideas about how things should be, without actually having to bear any of the responsibility of making it happen on the ground. Because talking is really more his forte. I mean, for decades, Anwar Ibrahim was held up as this leader with great potential who was never given a chance to prove himself. Well, now he's been given that chance, and he is really as inactive as if he had never been elected to office. I mean, he goes on and on about fighting corruption, and surely corruption is an important issue, but ultimately, Malaysians are going to have to start asking themselves, what is more damaging for a country, corruption or incompetence? I mean, honestly, at least corrupt politicians have to be active. You know, they have to come up with initiatives and policies and programs and projects that they can use to enrich themselves. And there's a trickle-down effect where there's some benefit for the population while they're running projects and programs and policies that they can collect graft from. There's still something going. At least there's something moving. There's some action. There's some activity. And some trickle-down benefit for the population. An incompetent politician just sort of sits there, immobile, as the problems just pile up all around them, which is what it looks like is happening with this government. I mean, I don't know, maybe Anwar's potential was eroded over the years due to being sidelined for all that time. I really don't know. You know, maybe at some point in his life earlier on, he really did have that potential, and he could have been a great leader back in those days, and he could have really been everything that he has been hyped up to be. But at this moment, it looks like he was elected and he won the seat of Prime Minister with an empty gas tank. His tank is empty at this point. I mean, he had the will for a long time to persevere until he could become the Prime Minister. And now that he has become the Prime Minister, it just doesn't look like he really has the will to be Prime Minister.
Tengku Zafrul pun raja TikTok juga. So he comes, he explains, he cerita. Now this he patut buat. Okay? Kalau whatever this guy is saying masuk akal and can be done, which sounds a bit preposterous, nak charge levy 10 kali kat Singaporean semua. You do all these kind of things, you affect kita punya tourism badly. Tapi tak apalah, Tengku Zafrul patut tengok, please do a TikTok, respond to this, very important, because kalau tidak orang nanti ingat dia ni pakar ekonomi, Malaysia tak ikut, Madani government tak ikut, and therefore it vilifies the government, and orang lagi marah subsidi tarik, and orang tuduh kata dah ada solution, orang bagi solution, government tak mau ambil. So respond, either you ambil solution dia ataupun you explain and you patahkan. Very, very important, because as this is going around, Tengku Zafrul punya TikTok must also go around. So please, I hope benda ni sampai kat Tengku Zafrul.
If you want to see more content like this, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you don't miss any new videos.